Okay, guys, well, it's 7:02, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I see we've got a couple people on. So tonight we're going to be talking about the bittersweet truth. And first off, I want to thank you guys all for coming. A couple of quick housekeeping notes here while I switch on the actual presentation. Uh, you are in webinar mode, so please ask your questions on Facebook. I'll pause a couple of times throughout the presentation, and we can answer those questions as we go along. I do feel like the wisest person is somebody who can admit when they don't know something. So just want to make sure that you guys understand if there is anything that's beyond me, I'll say that. And then one of the reasons I want to put it on Facebook is so that we can go back and answer things later. The timing for this should be right about an hour. Through all my rehearsals, I was coming in right around 43 minutes. So with some questions, then that'll go a little bit longer. But I want to be respectful of your time. As you guys heard, we will be recording. As far as the facts and figures that I use, I will tell you my references there at the end. Also, just a disclaimer, we're not receiving any money from anybody. This is a free webinar, and so even if you see some products or brand names or anything like that throughout, just understand that those are just things that I happen to have handy, and that's why I took those pictures, or the pictures you see may also be stock photos. So just so you guys understand, not supporting anybody in any particular fashion or anything. Last but not least, I want to say a special thanks to Brigida White. She actually came up with the idea of sugar. I was wondering what to give my first webinar about, and also wish her a happy early birthday because her birthday's tomorrow. So let's get started. First and foremost, who am I? Why am I sitting here talking to you guys? Why do you care? So my name is Jenna Jacobs, and I've spent nearly 20 years in healthcare. I figured it up the other day. It was about 18 years and 2 months or so. But I started out with volunteer fire and EMS, and I've continued with that throughout my lifetime. But I've also worked in the hospital, both in blood banks and labs. I worked in pharmaceutical research and development. I eventually became a national registered medic, and recently I got my health coach certification. I studied at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. There I was exposed to over 100 different dietary theories. Um, One of the things that really drew me to there is I've always felt like, you know, you and I could, for example, do the same diet. We could eat the same foods. We could work out just as much, but we'd have different results because not every solution is for everyone. And that is one of the main things that integrative nutrition espouses, and why they expose us to so many different dietary theories is because individuality, which I really love that term, and essentially it means that not every diet is the right one for everybody. I decided to go into health coaching because so many of the patients I would see had conditions which could either be prevented or managed with a little more support. And all I wanted to do was help people make their lives better. Throughout my career, especially in fire and EMS, I spent a lot of time working with public education, public relations, and so it was just kind of a natural progression that direction. So, what are we doing here? Well, first and foremost, the reason I got the idea to do a webinar is because my school actually encourages its graduates to do some free lectures and some public education as a means to cause a ripple effect. But that's not really what you were wondering, right? You were wondering what we're actually going to talk about tonight. So, what we're going to be talking about tonight is sugar. What is good, what is bad, and what's ugly about it. Here's the thing, it seems like every day you're hearing someone sort of demonize some kind of diet or another, whether it's, oh, eating meat is evil, or, oh, vegetarian means Indian word for lousy hunter. I've heard that one. And of course, sugar is also one of those. Fat was another one, although recently, we've seen a lot of backpedaling on that subject. So, what I want to talk about is really the truth about sugar. when it comes to the truth, usually there are two sides to every story, and the truth lies somewhere in between. And so that's what I really want to talk to you tonight. Kind of give you all of the information and let you see really what the truth is, what it is that we need um, to do with sugar. So we'll also talk about where it comes from, how it's used, what it might mean to you in particular. We'll also talk about some ongoing research and, of course, covering my references. And then what I'm sure all of you are wondering is what you can do to limit your sugar intake. The only thing that I ask is because this is our first webinar, I'd appreciate your feedback on the program at the end via email, which I'll give you my email address. What was good, what you thought we could do better, and what you'd like to see in future programs. So let's start off. What is sugar? Let's start with some basic statistics, okay? Between 1982 and 2012, meat consumption is down from 31.3% to 21.5% because people are worried about fat. By the way, fruits and vegetables consumption is only at 0.1%. Sweets consumption doubled from 11.9% to 22.9%. Let me say that again. In that same time period, 1982 to 2012, sweets consumption doubled from 11.9% to 22.9%. Not a perfect doubling, but doggone close. Also, over the last 30 years, obesity has doubled to 600 million worldwide. Americans, roughly 70% of them are obese. About 40% of our children are obese here in America. Diabetes has tripled. It's up to 347 million. Sugar consumption has increased worldwide by 46% in that same time period. Non-communicable diseases have actually surpassed communicable diseases as a threat. I feel like I need to repeat that. Sugar consumption has increased worldwide by 46% at the same time that obesity has doubled and diabetes has tripled. I just want you to think about that as we're going through this presentation. So what does it do? If you came up in the same generation as me, you might have heard the milk, it does a body good. So let's talk about, first off, what's good. Let's start this off on a positive note. Uh, so sugar is the primary energy source within the body. For example, the brain can only use glucose. That is the only fuel that it can use. And sugar is the primary energy source, excuse me, glucose is the primary energy source for all bodily functions and organs. But what does it do bad for the body? So let's talk about particularly table sugar. And I will try and keep myself corrected back and forth as we go through this presentation, whether we're talking about sugar as in table sugar or a specific type of sugar such as glucose, or in this case, I'm getting ready to talk about fructose. So table sugar is about 50% glucose and 50% fructose. Glucose, like I said, basic primary energy source. That's good, right? But fructose, on the other hand, is only metabolized in the liver. Let me say that again. Glucose can be metabolized throughout the body. Fructose can only be metabolized in the liver. If you have a sudden onslaught of, let's say, table sugar, whether it's baked goods or what have you, your body is designed, our body's really developed in a time when sometimes it was feast and sometimes it was famine. Think about this. There were times during the year, now we're going back before agricultural revolution and everything, when there was plentiful food all around, whether you're talking about the plants, which could feed both human and animal, or the animals, which were feeding the humans as well. During those times of plenty, You were running all around. Your body knew that, you know what, there's food around the corner all the time. You had to work for it, certainly, but that it was there. Whenever you would go into a time of famine, whether it was a local condition or whether we're talking about the season of the year, uh, then your body would try and store up everything. Now, when you were going through a famine, if you came across a food source, let's say, for example, late summer, early fall, you're going into winter, you're going to stock up on all the fruits that have come to be. And so you're stuffing up all of these, peaches or apples or pears or whatever they are, and you get this sudden influx of these sugars. Well, your body says, "Oh, well, you're trying to pack it away, so that must mean I need to hold on to it." And so your body actually takes that fructose, and if the levels raise too quickly, your liver will actually convert that fructose immediately over into fat. Huh. So it's not eating the fat that your body's turning into fat. It's eating the sugar that it's turning into fat. Huh. So with uh, with with that food lack, seasonal eating, you hear that term seasonal eating a lot in some of the more modern diets, and that's why is because they're trying to work with our bodies and what our bodies naturally want to do. So basically, if the body gets too much sugar all at once, it thinks it needs to save up for a rainy day and it stores it as fat. But we'll come back to that. Now, here's where I'm going to make some enemies. So, you've heard a calorie is just a calorie. I'm going to go with two different sides to that. Yes and no. Maybe a few less of you are ready to jump down my throat now. So, let's talk about what a calorie is. So, a calorie, technical definition here, warning, the calorie is the amount of energy that is needed to raise a certain amount of water, the temperature of that certain amount of water by 1 degree. Forgive me, I can't remember the amount of water. I want to say it's a couple milliliters, but the point is, technically, a calorie is a calorie. Yes, it is the energy that is required to raise the temperature of that water. So, on the other hand, though, what are you getting with those calories? I just want you to imagine right now what 100 calories worth of cookies would look like in your left hand and what 100 calories of, oh, let's use a sweet vegetable even, carrots, in your right hand. We're going to get back into that more later, but keep that visual. Diseases. So I'm going to grandstand here for a few moments. Diabetes is something that is kind of near and dear to my heart. It runs in my family. It affects my husband as well. And I've just seen a number of patients with diabetes. In fact, I would say that probably it was some of my diabetes patients that led me into this path. So let's talk a little bit about diabetes and its relation to sugar. You've also heard it called sugar diabetes, diabetes mellitus, or mellitus, depending on who you are. You've heard it called type 2 diabetes. You may have even heard it called adult onset diabetes. A European study showed that just one soda per day could cause a 29% increase in the chance of type 2 diabetes, irrespective of the calories. I'm going to say that last part again, irrespective of the calories. So even a diet soda with an artificial sweetener, they saw a 29% increase in the chance of diabetes. There's been other studies that have been done which have shown a 60% chance when you're doing the same study in kids. We're going to get a little more into studies later in the presentation. In America, 1 out of every 11 people has diabetes. If we were doing this as a video chat, if I had known the numbers were going to be so small, we would have done this as a video chat, and I would have had you guys all raise your hand if either you or someone you know and love has diabetes. I'm pretty sure every hand would have gone up. Now, here's something I really want you to take to heart. 26, that's over a quarter of all the cases in America, are attributed to sugar consumption alone. Oh, my apologies, I accidentally clicked ahead. What that is saying is that the physicians who are diagnosing these folks with diabetes say that over a quarter of the cases they see have diabetes purely based on their sugar consumption. That is what has caused this disease. And it's a horrible disease, and there's lots of comorbidities that go along with it. Also of interest, you heard me say earlier that diabetes type 2 is also, you might have also heard it called adult onset diabetes. It's now just called type 2 because the pediatric rates are on the rise. Let me put this in perspective for you. In 1980, there were 0 cases. I repeat, 1980, 0 cases of type 2 diabetes in children under the age of 18. 0. That's how many had been reported. Maybe there was 1 or 2 out there and just nobody had reported it. I doubt it. In 2010, there were 57,638 cases of type 2 diabetes in pediatrics. So moving on, I'll let you chew on that. But there's also fatty liver disease to consider. Now, fatty liver disease is essentially what it sounds like. Your liver has just been so overtaxed. Remember, that's where fructose is metabolized. It's been so overtaxed that it's running out of space to put things. It's just not as effectively filtering. Now, some of these next ones can actually be comorbidities with diabetes, but sometimes they are actually still present even though the pancreas is still working correctly. So you've got kidney disease, heart disease. Don't let anyone tell you that heart disease and blood sugar are not related because there are multiple studies out there. Blindness can even lead to amputation if you guys are familiar with neuropathy as well. Some other things that it causes, literally, you can be addicted to sugar, to sweetness rather, because you can also be addicted to those sweeteners as well. Several physicians out there actually say that eating it accelerates the aging process, leads to considerable gas, constipation, and bloating. I know those don't sound nearly as impressive next to the others that we've talked about, but point is, they're still there and they're still annoying. All right, before we move into how sweet it is, I just really want to quickly hop over here and make sure nobody's got any questions. And I'm not sure if you guys would be posting those in the actual Growth Matters page or if you'd be posting them in the Bittersweet Truth event page. So I'm just going to check both of them. I'm refreshing them real quick. No, great. Okay, we'll move on then. All right, picking up where we left off. So let's go on a sugar safari, shall we? It's not even close, guys. It is not even close to being a safari. All right, so where do we find it in our food? Well, fruits, obviously. I don't think any of you are going to be surprised to hear me say that. Um, you know, but is that necessarily a bad thing? Well, maybe not, because you do actually need some of those sugars for quick energies. There's also all sorts of other vitamins and nutrients and phytonutrients that go along with that. Some of you might be surprised to know that there's also sugar involved in several vegetables, sweet potatoes, carrots, yams, a number of others we'll get into in a little bit. Also, spice mixes. Um, Now, I'm going to flip over in a few moments to the video and I'm going to actually show you a couple of products that I've pulled together from around my home. Some of them you might be pretty surprised to see sugar in. Uh, Also, sauces and dressings. They are notorious, particularly if they are marked low fat, but that's a whole nother topic, which we get into later as well. Milk, especially the skim milk. Juice can have either natural sugar or, believe it or not, there are actually several companies out there who add sugar to their juice. Here's what I want you to take away. About 74% of all packaged food has added sugar. You're thinking, oh, but I don't eat anything that has a lot of added sugar. Well, how much sugar is in there naturally occurring as well? So those are some things to be looking at. So the reason why I say that is because there are so many names for sugar. This graphic here is actually from Women's Health magazine, and it just lists only 56 names for sugar. Well, yeah, I'm going to warn you, this is a little bit like conjugating in Spanish, but a couple of examples of some of the endings that give you a clue you might be looking at a sugar when you're reading the labels and you can't understand them. Ose, dextrin, saccharide, all, ace. Um, Here's the thing. There are three major structures of sugar. There are polysaccharides, or your complex carbs, your disaccharides, and your monosaccharides, both of which are referred to as simple sugars. What you may not realize is that glucose can actually be created within the body from protein and fat by the liver and kidneys, but it does that when you need that energy. Um, the It's about an 80-20% of what the body uses versus stores of glucose when you take it in. So when you take in that nice simple glucose that it loves and can use so easily, it will usually depending on some other factors, you will usually use about 80% and store 20%. Um, your intestine is where a lot of the glucose will be absorbed, and the liver is where it decides that it needs to store. So let's talk about fructose, though. So, fructose, however, one of the things that it does is it doesn't allow your body to feel full. So, it does that by messing with the hormones, and your hormones actually treat fructose very differently than the way they treat glucose coming in, even though it's still a sugar, differentiating there between table sugar and just being a sugar. Um, so a lot of people are concerned about, oh, I don't want processed sugar, so I'm going to try something all natural. Um, you might be surprised that agave nectar, which is actually one of my favorite sweeteners, it is actually highly processed, and it's about 90% fructose. Uh, Compare that with high fructose corn syrup, which is actually only 55% fructose. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around that when I found that in my writings, or excuse me, my research. And as we mentioned before, table sugar is about 50% fructose. I couldn't help myself. Uh, I'm not going to get into any kind of real politicking here or anything like that, which side is right, left, in the middle, upside down. But it is important to understand a little bit about government and its role in your food supply. So let's talk about that a little bit. So, from a regulatory standpoint, US daily value. Um, very soon, very soon, it will be 50 grams per day here in the US. Now, I'm going to take a moment and I'm actually going to switch us over to the video share because this is where I want to show you some of those household items here. All right. Hi, everybody. So, the first item that I want to show you, um, and I don't know, you may or may not be able to read all of these things. This Asian Shake-On's Chinese five spice. So we're looking here at, it says total carbs. Oh, there we go. Total carbs, 0 grams. However, that's just not going to focus, is it? All right, I just want to read this to you real quick. Dehydrated garlic and onion, salt, spices, maltodextrin, sugar, so dextrin, we saw that somewhere, sugar, okay. Reading further down, maltodextrin again, caramel color, natural flavor, corn syrup solids, lime juice solids, sodium, disodium. All right, so there you go. So what was that? Was that 4 sugars that we just talked about on one little item? But it's just Chinese spices, right? It's just Chinese spices. Hmm. All right, this one probably won't be a big surprise to you. Cider spices, okay. And here we have, let's look at this here. The sugars, 10 grams. Oh, you can almost read that one. And look at what the first 2 ingredients are, sugar and dextrose. Well, isn't that fun? I just realized that this video is actually on the wrong screen, so I'll have to just add some photoshots of this into the video that I make. So up next, coleslaw mix. Yummy coleslaw, right? Well, the dietary sugars, and if you look right now very carefully, says 0% and there's no RDA. Total carbs is about 2%, okay? On the ingredients, and this is pretty super fine, so I'm just going to go ahead and read it off to you. Very first ingredient, ingredient number 1, sugar. Did this one have some additional, I believe? It does have dairy solids, so there might be a little bit of sugar in that. Okay, but it didn't have sugar listed a second time. At least, thank goodness for small favors, right? So then let's look at Hidden Valley Ranch. Love ranch, right? Please note, not even the low-fat variety. However, it says 1 gram of carb. Yeah, that's just abysmal to try and read. We'll work on that for the next one. But the very first ingredient, maltodextrin. Nice, right? Let's see. All right, and that one's got no other easily identifiable sugars. But those are all, they're creamy, like salady sort of things. They're spice mixes, but they're not really healthy things, right? Okay, all right. I'm going to ease you into it here a little bit. Simply Organic Hollandaise sauce. It says organic, it's got to be healthy, right? Yeah, okay. So, less than 1 gram of sugar. Okay, that's good, right? 2 grams of carbohydrates. Only about 1% of your RDA for that. Very first ingredient, organic maltodextrin. Really? Really? Okay. Let's see. Non-fat milk. Organic lemon, maybe. Organic potato starch. Starch, complex carbohydrate. Organic cane sugar. I never thought hollandaise sauce tasted sweet. And then I started looking at this. All right, and that's all the offensive items in that. But sushi. sushi rice seasoning. Okay. The seasoning that goes in my sushi, my beloved sushi, our extremely healthy snack or meal, right? Okay. Okay. 5 grams total carbohydrates, sugars less than 1 gram. One, two, three. Third ingredient, lactose, milk sugar. Fourth ingredient, cornstarch. Sixth ingredient, sugar. Is that it? I think that was it. Yes, that's all that we have listed for those sugars. So yeah, you got to be really careful about anything packaged, anything. Thankfully, that's pretty close to the limits of what's packaged in my kitchen. So let's go back to the presentation. All right. So always look at your label. If you look at a label, if you want to go and grab an item, I can wait a few moments. But basically, all I'm going to point out to you is there's no percentage by what the current sugar is. So I promise I will also show you what the proposed label looks like. I'm still waiting to see some products that have this new label on there, but honestly, since I don't buy a whole lot of packaged stuff, I'm not really sure where they stand on the production of that. So just to give you a frame of reference, 1 teaspoon equals roughly 4 grams of sugar. Let's talk a little bit about sugar consumption. So in the U.S., we're going to be saying that the U.S. daily value is 50 grams a day, so that's roughly 12 teaspoons. Just to give you an idea of where we're supposed to be at. In Europe, currently, the sugar consumption is approximately 17 teaspoons per day. You know what? I'm going to chalk part of that up to, they have tea every day and, 1 lump or two. What's 2 lumps? Probably a teaspoon, 2 teaspoons, maybe. Uh, However, in the US, we're currently at 19.5 teaspoons per day, and I'm using the conservative count. Some of the other, what's the word I'm looking for? Some of the other surveys out there actually go as high as 41 teaspoons per day. US daily value coming soon, 12 teaspoons per day. Americans consuming as much as 41 teaspoons per day. It's going to be kind of a shock to the system. The American Medical Association actually says you only need about 6 to 9 teaspoons per day. Now, the World Health Organization, which is probably where the US daily value ended up coming from, says 12 teaspoons per day, and it should be less than 10% of your total consumed calories that should come from sugar. And that's out of a 2,000 calorie per day, aka is where they get the 50 grams per day. So why haven't there been percentages, daily values on sugar up until this point? Well, the short answer for that is lobbyists from the Sugar Association actually wanted you to have 25% of your consumed calories on a 2,000 calorie diet come from sugar. And then there was the World Health Organization, or the WHO, was sitting there saying they wanted 10%. And so rather than make anybody upset up until that point, they had been bowing to the lobbyists and just not putting anything on there. Now that I think about it, I think I'm going to actually create an infographic that shows weight of the weight of the average person's food, and then I'm going to do that in sugar, that 25% versus the 10%, just to kind of give people a picture of that. I think that would be good. Let me catch up my presentation to where I am real quick. Alrighty. So here is the proposed label, and I did actually pull this from the Center for Science for the Public in the Public Interest net.org, and Great group of guys and gals. Keep a watch on them, get their newsletter, a lot of great information. That's actually how I found out about all of this. Now, I want you to notice the total carbohydrates 37 grams, aka 13%. Okay, it's 13%, whatever this product is 13% of your daily recommended value of total carbohydrates. Now look over at the total sugars, excuse me, the percentage of the daily value for the added sugars, and notice it's only added sugars that they're doing the percentile on. It's 20%. So it's 13% of your total carbs, but it's 20% of the sugar that you're supposed to have. And please notice that's only for the added sugar, which is 10 grams, whereas the total sugars are 12 grams. Okay, so remember I said I was going to come back to a calorie is a calorie? The slide's even going to look pretty similar when we get there. So on here, I've just got a quick shot of orange juice versus oranges. And I just want you to try and hold this image in your mind while I go on to the next bit. So remember, calorie is a calorie, right? All right, I am not arguing with the first law of thermodynamics. The first law of thermodynamics says that matter is neither created or destroyed. Energy is a form of matter. But here's the thing: there are other mitigating factors. Um, do you remember we spoke about metabolism? Think about this for a second. You have this wonderful, cold, crisp glass of orange juice in the morning, or you can have an orange. Which are you going to go for? You're probably going to go for the orange juice. You know what? It's a lot less work, especially if you're like me and you don't need the little skins in between the wonderful juicy bits and everything like that. But here's the thing: the fruit juice is going to slam that sugar into your system. It's going to get there very quick. Okay, what is that going to do? We talked about this earlier. That's right. It's going to cause a sudden spike in your blood sugar, which means your liver's going to go into storage mode. It's going to say, hey, I need to store up. This is my rainy day. I need to save up for my rainy day here. So that's what I'm going to do. All right. Some other mitigating factors instead of just the time is also the fiber that's in the actual orange. Okay. That fiber further helps to slow down the digestion as well. Also helps you to make more be by slowing the digestion down. It gives your body more time to absorb the nutrients. What's the number one reason most people drink orange juice? Most people drink orange juice for the vitamin C. They're looking to help themselves with their immunity. But here's the thing: as juice, it's running through your system so quick, it's not getting time to absorb all that great goodness that it's got there. So, let's see, we talked about your insulin response and your sugar into, because insulin is your turn sugar into fat hormone. Insulin is the key that gets your glucose into your cells. Okay. Um, Obesity is roughly at 30% in America. Okay. But let me ask you this: did you know that normal weight people, okay, people who fall within that acceptable weight range, 40% of them still have metabolic dysfunction. 21% of diabetics are normal weight. Last thing I'm going to say about this whole calorie is a calorie thing is to watch out for healthy foods. Okay. When you're talking about foods which have had their fat removed, they've often had sugar added. Okay. That's actually going to make it as bad, if not worse, for you. Um, my mother-in-law is famous for reminding me what the nuns used to teach her was fat burns fat, and they're not far off. I mean, it's a little simplistic, but that's not far off. Um, High insulin levels will actually block the "I'm full" signal, and they will cause you to eat more. So by having that sweetness going into your system, you're going to create more insulin, and that's going to make you want to eat more. And before you go saying, oh, well, my fat free whatever actually uses an artificial sweetener, so it's not sugar. Many of the artificial sweeteners actually do the same thing. They actually cause the same hormone reaction because the brain perceives it as sweet, even though it's not sugar. So let's talk a little bit about research. Man, I really miss Faye McCullum, one of my favorite instructors ever. Um, she was actually my one of my middle school science teachers, but she once said something to the effect of, "Is a bit of research conducive or conclusive?" In other words, is it barely more than anecdotal research, or is it actually correlated amongst many studies? What was the sample set? Um, I also had an experience when I was trying to bring a new treatment modality to EMS. One of the medical directors that I was working with, she saw I literally had a stack of printed studies and everything like this, and they were all highlighted and color coded and tabulated and everything like this. Probably looked a little scary walking in with it and everything. But the point she made when she started looking through those studies was many of them that I had found, yes, they said what I wanted them to say, but they were extremely small sample sets. Or worse yet, some of them were actually compilations of anecdotal research. So, that's just one of the things that I want you to be aware of. I also want you to be aware of some research has interests behind it. For example, cyclamates in the 60s, I believe the Sugar Association actually, well, I know the Sugar Association paid for the research, but I believe the whole point was they wanted cyclamates proved as carcinogens. Why? Because they wanted everybody sweetening everything with sugar. Um, but here's the thing, it does cost money to do good, high quality research. It's hard to pay for researchers and buy equipment and all this when nobody's supporting you. You might get lucky and have a school support you, but it's not too often that an industry is going to try and support you to do research against them. So, so there's a couple of studies that I really don't have time to go into all of them, but just a couple of interesting findings from some of those studies. Uh, Sugar, or sweetness rather, is actually 4 times more addictive than cocaine. And by the way, that's not the only addictive food, but sugar is what we're talking about. There have also been studies showing that sugar can activate serotonin in the body, can mess with the endorphin pathways. Basically, caveat emptor. Even if a study sounds plausible, even if it tells you exactly what you want to hear, read it carefully. Look for collaboration and correlation between other studies. And remember, your body and your type of metabolism doesn't always believe what the latest fad is. So don't get down on yourself just because, you try whatever the latest fad is and it doesn't work out. Um, I want you to remember Time magazine cover, and I wish I had been able to find images on the internet of both of them, but the Time magazine cover I remember from like the what 1970s, 1980s, where it was the little white plate on the cover and it had two little eggs looked like eyes, and then a frowny face made out of bacon, was talking about how awful cholesterol was. Well, and then just a few years ago, there was the article where they were basically like, "Oops, our bad, guys," and talking about how butter, you know, isn't nearly as bad as we all thought it was. I want to take a break real quick here and just flip over to the Facebook page and just see if anybody's had any questions real quick. Let's just see. All right. Nothing going there. Oh, whoops. Hit refresh, Jennifer. All right. I'm also not seeing any visitor posts. So, all right. We'll just keep on a rolling then. You guys are easy to talk to then. Sorry, that's going to restart. So I promised you that I would post I would share with you my references. In total, there's about 12 different references here. And these are some of the lectures that I've listened to, um, books that I've read, some documentaries as well. They're all mentioned in here. There's a couple other things that I read and I researched through while I was making this presentation, but I didn't end up quoting anything or any of their numbers or anything like that. But I'll go ahead and I'll post those as well when I on my next blog on my site, even though I didn't quote them directly in the material. I definitely want to point out the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. Again, even though they're not getting any money or anything like, or giving any money or anything like that, I really encourage you guys to check them out. If you really have an interest and passion for this uh, top top notch education, I've really enjoyed it. So, last but not least, I want to talk about what can I do. Obviously, if you're here with me tonight, the reason is because you wanted to know what to do about sugar in your own life. Maybe you're a diabetic. Maybe you've got a friend or a family member who's a diabetic. Maybe you're just thinking that it's a way for, by losing sugar or by avoiding sugar, that you can actually drop some weight, improve your health in other ways, lose the acne, whatever it is. So let's talk about a couple of ways to do that. Now, I want you to notice the title of this slide is Ways to Cut Sugar. It's not the ways to stop sugar, not ways to quit sugar. And here's the reason why, is because it's very hard to take something that you love and willingly give it up. Okay? That's why Lent is so hard for myself and fellow Catholics, is because we're giving up something that we really love, at least if we're doing it right. But here's the thing, I'm not saying to quit it. All right, I'm saying to cut it. And here's the thing, one of the other principles that I picked up from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition is that, you can actually crowd out things rather than cutting them out. Okay, so we're not going to push, we're just going to crowd out. So let's talk about a couple of different ideas. So when you're hungry, try drinking water. A lot of times when you're thirsty, you're actually misinterpreting the feeling and thinking that you're hungry. If 20 minutes after you've drank 8 ounces, you still feel hungry, have something sensible. No worries. You can also take a handful of high protein nuts to kind of quell your hunger. Now, maybe it's not that you're hungry so much as that you're craving sweets. Why not try a bit of strawberries? Or even better, try a sweet vegetable like carrots or sweet potato, corn, or beets. You can also add into your diet more organic animal protein, wild fish, whole grains, beans, green and white teas. Those all help to work naturally on your sweet cravings. Also, when you're cooking, number one, staying away from the packaged foods also means staying away from the fast food and the restaurants, okay? You can actually cut a lot of your sugar just by doing more cooking at home. And I do offer some cooking classes, but we'll get into that. Um, but when you're doing cooking at home, use spices that sweeten without actually being sugary. Things like cinnamon and coriander and nutmeg and cloves and cardamom. Um, Also, you'll notice a lot of those sweet spices are also demulcents as well. A lot of the foods that are sweet are also demulcent. And so you may also be craving sweet or feel like you're craving sweet when you're actually just dehydrated. Refer back to number one, try drinking some water first. You can also crave sweets because you're mentally fatigued. Okay. Um, so Maybe if you're craving sweets, get a hug, talk to a friend. If you're at work, send a text message or something real quick. Um, Step outside, get a little sunshine. That might actually help as well. We mentioned eating less packaged food and less fast food and restaurants. Obviously, I showed you guys a couple of pre-made spice mixes that had loads of sugar in them in several places, some of them as the main ingredient. Um, Also, when we start talking about your meals and cooking at home and everything, regardless of your preferred diet, whether you're a meat eater, whether you're a vegetarian, a pescatarian, a vegan, whatever your preferred diet, use whole foods. Meat eaters, though, I do want you to watch out for uh, pre-done seasonings in your meat. For example, from time to time, I'll get boneless, skinless chicken. Okay, a lot of times that's in the seasoning solution. Watch out, read your labels very carefully. Look out for low fat foods. I've said that a couple of times, but basically, in order to keep them palatable, a lot of them have loads of added sugar. And so, just watch out for those. Read your labels really carefully. Moving on from food, let's talk about sleep. By getting adequate amounts of sleep, you will actually improve your hormone balance, your insulin, your ghrelin, and your cortisol levels. I cannot stress this enough. Sleep is awesome. All right. Uh, Most people need about 6 to 8 hours. Okay. Maybe you need a little more. Maybe you can get by with less, but I don't think you really need less than 6 hours. So definitely just get a good night's sleep. Maybe you stay in the bed that many hours, but you find that you get up once, twice, three times in the middle of the night. Maybe control your fluid intake, after, say, if your bedtime's 10, maybe after 9 o'clock, try and limit your fluids so that you're not getting up in the middle of the night so that you can get that good cyclic sleep that you need. And then, last but not least, don't freak out. You knew I was going to say it at some point. You thought I was going to say exercise, didn't you? I say just take a walk. Because here's the thing. Yes, you do need some physical activity and some exercise in your life, but just 10 minutes of physical activity, whether it's taking a walk, a little bit of yoga, if you're at work, desk yoga, that physical activity can actually help balance the hormones. And again, that's going to help you with your sugar cravings and with your processing, your body's processing of the foods that you take in. And then shameless help self promotion, get a health coach. So why would you want to get a health coach? First off, a health coach will help you to get yourself to your goals. Saying that another way, you set the goals. And when you go and see the doctor, first off, they certainly don't spend an hour with you. That's going to be my target time with you, is at least an hour with you each time we meet. Um, but the doctor actually sets the goals for you. And, they see so many people, they can't really track your progress, or they, let me say that a different way. Let me say that a more fair way. They aren't able to see you as often and as long as your health coach can. Uh, as a health coach, at least for my programs, I meet with people twice per month. Uh, and I'm available in between times as well. And I let you set the goals. You tell me what it is you want to accomplish rather than holding you up to some lofty perfect ideal. We'll step into getting to whatever your ideal health and wellness is. Again, at least with my program, I do a free initial consultation. Figure out, do we even want to work together? Some personalities just don't work together well, and that's fine. I'll be glad to either refer you to another health coach or whatever you want to do. Um, Again, at least for me, it is a 6 month program. Again, about 2 meets per month. I also do grocery store tours, other field trips based on what your needs are, and some in between minor classes, like let's say you say that you can't even boil water. I'll have you cooking by the end of that 6 months, and you'll be amazed at what you can accomplish. So, last but certainly not least, I promised you guys in exchange for this, all I wanted was a little bit of feedback from you guys. And so, if you would, please give me an email at growthmattersllc@gmail.com. Let me know what you liked about this presentation, what you disliked about it, what you think we could do better, and what topics you'd like to see in the future. We are also on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest, and you can get to those from our site, which is also on there. It's very important to say Your Growth Matters LLC, uh, particularly the Your and the LLC. There's some kind of shady stuff going on, I think, on some other combinations of that. But I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time to be with me tonight. And thanks again to Brigida for coming up with the idea of talking about sugar. And I hope this helps somebody. If you need more information, give me a shout. You know where to find me.